So you saw in the intro, Protea's pretty powerful, and that's basically why I gave the video the name that it has. Protea, since she came out, this is basically the build that I've been running, so in this video I'm going to take a look and see why this build is so powerful, what mods to use, how I have modded her, and we'll take a look at her base abilities anyway. So hi, how's it going? This is my Protea, and my Protea is about to show all of her abilities to you. Let's take a look. Okay, so that's Protea's abilities. They're pretty cool when you're using them in game. She's very fluid with her movement, which is nice. She's very nice to play with. And the casting animations on all the abilities are not too long. The only difference I've made with this build is Elemental Ward. I don't use the fourth ability because with this build, I've gone for even more crowd control, protection, buffing my allies, and I'm going to explain why when I actually get into it. So, this is the build I'm running.
Your chosen Warframe suits you.
So, you can see the stats here. Duration, I've got 117%, efficiency 75%, range 235, and strength 238. I don't have much duration and efficiency because I have flow and energize, so I've got a massive energy pool, and I'm getting a lot of energy anyway from my energize, and I'm also running the Zenoric skill tree for my operator, so I'm getting a lot of energy when I'm void dashing. You can see I don't really have much protection, armor, health, shield. Believe it or not, Protea's shield abilities are actually really strong. Her first ability, Grenade Fan, with this ability you can either tap it to activate it and it will create a shrapnel vortex which creates a slashing, staggering swirl of shrapnel, so all the enemies get caught in it, they can't move because they're constantly staggering and they take a lot of slash damage. But if you hold the ability, you create shield satellites, which spawn on like the ground. You'll be able to see it there in the clip, yep, and then they orbit whatever ally you throw them on, including defense objectives, which is very useful, companions, whatever. As long as it's an ally, it can be affected by the shield satellites. So you can see at the bottom, shields, you can get a maximum of 1190 with this build. Shields per second, 119 shields per second, so that's quite a lot. Of course you can take a lot more damage than that per second, but it does trigger shield gating, so every time you get shields and your shields go down, you get that trigger gate, you get the shield gate anyway. So you're not taking any damage within like a few like split seconds or whatever. Her second ability is Blaze Artillery, which shoots plasma bolts at enemies and affects an AoE, which is very powerful. This ability is super powerful on this. You can see once all the enemies were grouped up in the clip at the start, I use the Blaze Artillery and it just blasts everything. The more hits it gets, it builds up damage, so as you can see, damage per hit plus 100%, so it has like a little charge symbol on it. You can see times 1, times 2, times 3, whatever, and that actually increases its damage every time it gets a hit. So if it's hitting multiple enemies at once, I believe that increases the stacks even more. So if you group loads of enemies together, then yeah, the damage ramps up really quickly. So you can see the range on this build is really far too, so it's basically like a sniper, to be fair. The effects in AoE, can't complain. Her third ability is quite self-explanatory, Dispensary. It literally dispenses energy, health and ammo. This is actually the subsumable ability on Protea, which is very nice, of course. Cannot complain about that. You get an extra pickup chance too, with more strength. So you can see it's 59%, so that's a chance of dropping even more stuff. This, of course, synergizes very well with Energize, because from this you're getting energy to drop. Energize increases how much energy you can get from this. And if Energize triggers, it replenishes all the energy of your teammates too, like 200 energy. So pop this down at the start of like a defense, survival or whatever, and just fill your allies' energy right up. And then with Elemental Ward, yeah, I've gone for Elemental Ward. This is quite a good subsumable ability in my opinion. It's not just because I love Chroma, okay? Like, I love Chroma, but this is generally just a really good ability. And it fits really well with this build, so this increases your shield capacity even more, just like grenade fans, so a lot of shield capacity. And then also, enemies that damage your shield will, like, a lot of that damage will be reflected back. Damage multiplier, 23.8 times, so that's a lot of damage reflected back. With extra strength and range, if you get shot, then enemies within like 23 meters. If they hit you within 23 meters, they're basically going to kill themselves. At lower level missions, this is extremely good. You hardly have to do anything, you just run across the map and the enemies shoot you and die. Very useful. And of course, if they melee you, they get shocked. It's brilliant. I think it synergizes really well with Grenade Fan, just getting even more overshields. Duration, even though it's low, you still got 30 seconds, and I've got a ridiculous amount of energy anyway, so it's not that bad. It's really manageable. And with the range and strength, it's, you know, really good. Efficiency, it's 75%. It looks low, but you can see in the clip, even though I was using a lot of abilities and spamming abilities, with this build, your energy just fills right back up anyway. It's kind of ridiculous. So let's take a look at what mods I've got. Transient Fortitude, Overextended, Blind Rage, Stretch, Streamline, Umbral Intensify, Primed Flow, and Primed Primed Continuity, okay? So, these are literally just buffing my ability strengths, range, lowering my efficiency, and giving me a tiny bit more duration. That's what I've been playing around with since Protea came out. I've tried other builds like solid duration, but at the end of the day, if I can manage without duration and efficiency, because the way I see it, duration and efficiency are basically efficiency if you think about it. They just, you know, you don't have to use your abilities as much if you've got more duration, so that makes them efficient. But I can manage that, so that's why I've gone lower. And I've gone much more into range and strength instead, which technically, in my eyes, are both strength. The more enemies you hit with range, the more damage you're doing, so the more strength you have. That's what I've gone with. I can manage without efficiency, so I've gone for pure strength. When you actually do a Fisher mission, with when you collect all the reactant and you get the even more of a range and strength buff, then this becomes absolutely insane. You get up to like, I don't know, 400% on both of the... I don't know, it's ridiculous. And then in my aura slot, I've got Growing Power. When I'm affecting enemy with status effects, for example, my first ability, where I'm constantly hitting enemies with slash damage, I get an extra 25% ability strength on my next cast of an ability. And Prime Sure-Footed because I'm using the Ogress with this build, and the Ogress has a massive blast radius, and it knocks me down all the time, so that's what I use to negate that knockdown status effect. And also I have Arcane Aegis on here. I'm going to be taking a lot of damage all the time on my overshields, so I have this to have even more overshields. Now the good thing about this, you might think it's quite, okay, yeah, you're going to get absolutely annihilated by Infested because toxin damage and whatever. But, in my opinion, you can use the first ability all the time on the ground and it staggers all the Infested anyway, so they can't really touch you. That's my way of doing it. An Ogress, like, you could crowd control Infested very easily with this. Like, you could just stay back, let them run into your vortex and, yeah, they're dead. So that's pretty much the build on Protea. Now I've already done a video on the Ogress, which I shall link in the cards, but there was the build I'm using for it. If you want more details about that, then you can go and watch the video now. I'm also using the Kuba Nuke Core because when all the enemies are grouped up like they were, then, you know, this affects literally chains between all the enemies, so win-win. Stropher, I'm really loving this melee at the minute. Hardly use it as a melee. I always just use the heavy attack, and it basically shoots out like a cone and affects a lot of enemies in front of you. So when they're all grouped up, you can hit multiple enemies at once with this, and it does a lot of damage. You can see my stats here: 112% critical chance, critical multiplier, 3,600 damage, and like the wind up, the heavy attack, 9,000 damage. So a fair amount of damage. And yes, this is the build I'm using for my Stropher. You can copy it if you want, but it's not brilliant. It gives me extra life steal, so yeah, not too bad. Basically built for like heavy damage, you know, less wind up speed, whatever. Which I'm not actually sure if that affects gun blades, but yeah, it's a pretty decent build. Yeah, pretty decent stats. But it's not the main focus. The other thing I'm using is my companion is just Smeeter. There's no actual companion really synergizes with this build as far as I'm aware. I've not really tested many companions with it, so I've just gone with a Smeeker for that because me and my clan right now need a lot of materials, so it helps me get more materials. Zenoric, let me show you what is very useful on this build. So energizing dash, of course, for that extra energy. You dash with your operator by going into void mode. You just dash and you leave a pool of energy on the ground that lasts for 8 seconds, and when you pass through it you get 5 energy regeneration for 30 seconds per second, so that's a lot of energy. I use this on nearly all of my builds, but there is some builds where you just don't need this when you don't require energy as much. The other useful thing on this is void singularity. So as you saw in the first clip, when I go to void mode I can pull all the enemies towards me. So the way I do it is I throw my first ability onto the ground, so it's going to stun them. I switch straight to my Tenno so I don't take much damage, and then I can start pulling them all into the shrapnel vortex. And then once they're all in the shrapnel vortex, I can just come straight out of there. Don't dash whilst you're in there because it can fling them away, which is not what you want because you want them to stay there. You just switch back to your Warframe, and then you let rip with your abilities. If they're all bunched up, you can use your plasma second ability, the plasma turrets, and they will shred absolutely anything. As long as they've got armor, the plasma bolts do fire damage, so they shred armor, and even the fire will make the enemies panic, so they can't do anything anyway. Let's take this into a normal mission. Let's see where we can go. Let's go to, I don't know, I guess we'll test it on ESO. Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. Oh, shut up, Lich. No one's interested. So let's go to Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. We're just going to do 1, maybe 2 rounds, depending on what enemies we get. I haven't done the Elite Sanctuary Onslaught this week yet, so not sure what it's going to be in terms of enemies. Right, Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. So I'm going to do the void dash before I go in there, so you can see at the top right I'm going to start generating some energy. So as soon as I get through this portal, energy, there we go. Right, can throw my dispensary down. I mean, yeah, so the enemies are really spread out at this point, so honestly my abilities don't do all the work. But you can see, I could just throw down these turrets, make sure that I hold my first ability, and then look at all them overshields. I'm not going to be dying very easily with all them overshields, so I just need to make sure I keep them topped up with my elemental ward and my shield satellites on my first ability, and we're all good. I mean, the enemies are going to keep spawning at these doors, so I can just keep shrapnel vortexing these doors, and if they run through there, they're gonna die. I mean, they can't really do anything. On Hydron, this build is very powerful. If you want to just be the killer for Hydron, then you can just throw all the shrapnel vortexes on all the doorways where the enemies spawn, and they pretty much spawn and die like instantly. So if you want to carry some people through Hydron, this is definitely a build that is very usable. If anything, it's probably better than Saren for Hydron, because Saren, like, if you kill all the enemies too quickly, then her abilities, you have to ramp them back up again. But with this, you just put the shrapnel vortexes on the doorways, and there you go. You can forget about it for, with this build, about 17 seconds. So pretty good. You can see I'm not having any energy problems. Now, if you don't have Arcane Energize and you don't have Zenoric, so you're constantly getting a flow of energy, then you're probably going to struggle to keep your energy up. Okay. So that's kind of a part of the build. So yeah, it's quite an expensive build, but I still want to show it off because it's absolutely ridiculous. It's something that you can definitely work towards, and it can carry you through a lot of different content. It's kind of like a mix between Vauban, Messer with the turret, kind of Zaku I suppose with his second ability. I'm pretty sure that's what like his second ability is based on, like these turrets. They're pretty much the same thing where you take all the enemy's weapons and then you run around out of the turret. So yeah, I mean, that was one wave. You know, a lot of enemies dying. Pretty good stuff. Elemental ward. Okay, we're going to really test on an enemy because they're all dead. But yeah, we're just going to leave that there. So that's the build I'm running for Protea. I'm not exactly using any other builds right now on Protea. This is my go-to. I've just been running this on almost everything at the minute. Of course, it's good for defense, exterminations because the turrets, mobile defense, excavations because the shield satellites keep the excavators' health up, not the health, sorry, the shields. So if you think you're going to use the build, or you've got any feedback, and if you've got any opinions on something else that you would change, then let's discuss it in the comments section. Otherwise, let me know how you get on with it, see if you can actually get it. Are you actually close to getting the build? Can you actually achieve it? Who knows? Oh, we got an S rank too, if you see there. But yeah, let me know what you think. Leave a like or a dislike so I can tell if people are liking what I'm creating on YouTube. And subscribe if you want to see more crazy builds just like this one. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys, and I'll catch you some other time.